A triangle has side lengths 9 and 12 with included angle 25 degrees. Solve the triangle. So we'll go ahead and draw what we have here. We've got 9 and 12, and our angle between them is 25 degrees. Okay. And we want to solve this triangle. So that means find the other two angles and the third side. This is a side angle side situation. So side angle side, we know that we're using the law of cosines. Let's go ahead and just label here. I'll call this angle A. This side is A. This angle B, side B, angle C, and C. Now, because we have angle A, the law of cosines form that we're going to use is the one that has the angle A in it. So that's the A squared equals B squared plus C squared minus 2BC cosine of the angle A. So now we can go through and plug in. You can see that our side A is what we don't know, but the other two sides, B and C, are what we do know. So that's nice. So we've got 9 squared plus 12 squared minus 2 times 9 times 12 times the cosine of 25 degrees. Well, so now we're trying to find angle A, so obviously we're going to be doing the square root of both sides here. So A, I'll just cross off this squared here. A will be the square root of all of that. Let's go ahead and plug that into our calculator. So we've got the square root. And let me point out, of course, when we do the square root, typically we have plus or minus. But since A represents the length of a side of a triangle, it, of course, cannot be negative. So we have the positive square root. Positive 9 squared, squared, plus 12 squared minus 2 times 9 times 12 times the cosine. So we'll go to our trig cosine of 25. I am in degree mode here in the calculator, so I know that the calculator will interpret that as a 25 degrees. And we hit enter, and that tells us A. I'll go ahead and round to 2 decimal places here. So A is about 5.41. 5.41. Okay, now I've got all sides of my triangle. And now I can use either the law of sines or the law of cosines to find these angles here, because I have now side angle. And so I can do law of sines, but of course I also have side, so I can use the law of cosines. I'm going to go stick with the law of cosines since that's what this video is demonstrating. So to find angle C, I'll do C here, we use the form of the law of cosines that has the angle C in it. That's C squared equals A squared plus B squared minus 2AB cosine of the angle C. All right, well, now I can plug in everything I know. I know here everything except for that angle C. Now I'm going to point out something. As we plug things in here, we have 12 squared equals A, which we chose this 5.41 as a round. That's a rounded form of A. And you need to be careful because when you have a rounded number, if you then use that rounded number in a calculation, that means that your next answer will be a little bit more off because you used a rounded number. And then you round that new answer, and you can just really quickly get pretty far off of what you want. So when doing this, it's very useful to use the store function of your calculator. So in this calculator, our store function, it's usually marked as STO with a little arrow, okay? So we have this number. I'm going to click that. I'm going to store that in a variable, okay? And depending on your calculator, your variables can show up in different places. Here, I've got this here. So I can click this, and you can click through to pick different variables. And because it's A, I'm going to go ahead and store it in A, all right? And then hit enter. And now every time I type A, and I have to click through again. Every time I type A, okay, and just hit enter, you can see that that's what A is. So the calculator knows what A is, and it's not rounded. So now as I use that in my calculations, that won't throw off my next answers. Okay, so that's what we're going to use in our calculator. Let's go ahead and just finish off here solving for this cosine of C. So we'll start by subtracting these numbers here. So we've got 12 squared minus the 5.41 squared minus the 9 squared. And then we can divide by these numbers here. So over negative 2 times the 5.41 squared. Oh, sorry, not squared. Times the 9. And that's equal to the cosine of C. So if I want angle C, of course I'm going to do the arc cosine of that. Okay, so that's going to be our angle C now. And that's what I'm ready to plug into the calculator. And when I hit this point, the 5.41, I'm actually just going to use that variable A. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that here. So I've got 12. Oh, sorry, the cosine inverse. So my trig, okay, cosine inverse of this fraction, 12 squared minus that A squared. So I can click through, and these variables become particularly useful when you have multiple different numbers that you're going to be using in calculations. Minus the 9 squared over the negative 2 times A times 9. Okay, and so we hit enter, and that tells us our angle C. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and round that to 110 point. I'll just do one decimal place for the angles. 110.3 degrees. Okay, now I have angle C. I know angle A, and so to find my third angle, we take those other two angles and subtract them from 180. So I have angle B equals 180 degrees minus the angle A, and then minus that angle C. Now, once again, we are using a rounded form here, so best practice would be to use the exact form when we actually type it into our calculator. Let me show you one other way of doing that. Since there's only one number that I'm using here, when we type in our 180 minus 25 minus, I don't need to store that in a variable. I can actually just use the answer button. Right here you can see ANS for answer. And by hitting that, the calculator is going to use the answer, the last answer that we obtained. Okay. And we hit enter, and so we get 44.7. 44.7 degrees. And so that's our solved triangle. We've got our angles B, C, and of course A, it was given, and then our three sides.